What kind of person tries to steal a home carved from sweat and dreams, built board by board on a mountainside? The kind who believes the world bends to their will, who sees a quiet man's refuge and decides it's theirs for the taking. That's where my story begins. On a crisp autumn morning when Karen swaggered onto my property like she already owned it. My cabin, perched on a ridge in the Blue Ridge Mountains, was my sanctuary, a place where the wind whispered through pines and the stars felt close enough to touch. I'd built it with my own hands after my wife, Ellie, passed, pouring every ounce of grief and hope into its timber frame. It was mine, paid for in cash and tears, a refuge from a world that moved too fast. But Karen, she didn't care about any of that. She rolled up in a gleaming SUV, her voice cutting through the morning mist like a chainsaw. "This land's in dispute," she barked, waving a crumpled survey map as her husband, a wiry man named Greg, hovered nervously behind her. Their lawyer, a slick guy in a cheap suit, stood off to the side, clutching a briefcase like a lifeline. Karen, all 300 pounds of her, planted herself on my porch, her floral dress clashing with the serene greens and browns of my mountain. "We own the ridge," she declared. "Your cabin's on our plot. Pack up or we'll sue you into the ground." I stood in the doorway, a retired carpenter with calloused hands and a heart still raw from loss, staring at this woman who thought she could rewrite my life with a forged document and a loud mouth. I didn't say much. I never do. But I was listening, and I was thinking. Karen's claim was nonsense, but it wasn't baseless. I'd heard whispers in town about the family buying up land, bullying neighbors with lawsuits, and flipping properties for profit. They'd targeted my 10 acres because it was prime real estate, remote, pristine, with a view developers would kill for. The survey she waved was a fake, but it was convincing enough to scare someone who didn't know better. I did. I'd double-checked my deed when I bought the land 15 years ago, had it surveyed twice, and kept every document locked in a fireproof safe. But Karen wasn't banking on facts. She was banking on intimidation, on me being too tired or too broke to fight. She underestimated me. That was her first mistake. I invited her inside, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see how far she'd push. Over coffee, I didn't offer her. She ranted about encroachment and eminent domain, tossing around legal terms she clearly didn't understand. Greg nodded along, his eyes darting to the door like he wanted to bolt. The lawyer, though, was the real threat. He stayed quiet, watching me, sizing up whether I'd fold. I didn't. I pulled out my own survey, my deed, my tax records, all pristine, all ironclad. Karen barely glanced at them. "Doesn't matter," she snapped. "We've got better lawyers. You'll be out by spring." That's when I smiled. Just a little. She thought she was hunting a mouse. She didn't know she'd stepped into a bear trap. The truth started to unravel when I hired my own lawyer, a sharp woman named Clara who'd grown up in these mountains and knew every trick in the book. Clara dug into the Karen family's history, and it wasn't pretty. They'd been pulling this stunt for years, forging surveys, strong-arming landowners, and exploiting loopholes to seize property. Their own land, a sprawling 50 acres abutting mine, was tangled in liens and unpaid taxes. Karen's confidence came from a pattern of winning. But patterns break when you meet someone who fights back. Clara found the original survey records at the county office, buried under decades of dust, proving my cabin was squarely on my land. Better yet, she discovered a clerical error in the Karen family's deed, a tiny oversight that left a chunk of their property vulnerable. I didn't just want to win. I wanted to make sure they'd never try this again. The twist came when Clara uncovered something personal. Karen's husband, Greg, wasn't just a silent partner in her schemes. He was a victim, too. Court records showed he'd tried to divorce her years ago, citing emotional abuse and financial coercion. The case was dropped, likely because Karen bullied him into staying. I saw it in his eyes that day on my porch: fear. Shame. A man trapped by his own bad choices. For a moment, I pitied him. But pity doesn't win wars. Clara used Greg's deposition to paint a picture of Karen as the mastermind, a woman who'd built a small empire on lies and intimidation. That deposition became our secret weapon, a crack in their armor we'd exploit when the time came. By the time we faced off in court, the tension was electric. Karen strutted into the county courthouse like she owned it, her voice echoing off the wood-paneled walls as she berated her lawyer for being late. I sat quietly with Clara, my documents spread before us like a loaded deck. The judge, an older man with a no-nonsense stare, didn't flinch when Karen launched into her spiel about her land and her rights. Clara stood, calm as a winter lake, and laid out our case: my deed, my survey, the county records, and a bombshell counterclaim. We weren't just defending my cabin. We were challenging the Karen family's entire property line, arguing their deed was invalid due to the clerical error. If we won, their 50 acres, or at least a good chunk of it, called be reclassified as unclaimed land. And I'd be first in line to claim it. Karen's face went red, then purple, as Clara spoke. She interrupted, shouting about conspiracies and corrupt hicks, until the judge slammed his gavel and threatened to hold her in contempt. Greg sat beside her, eyes fixed on the floor, his hands trembling. Their lawyer scrambled, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forged survey was exposed when Clara presented the county's original records, time-stamped and notarized. Karen's story fell apart like wet cardboard. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker, every whisper and rustle amplified as the judge deliberated. I caught Greg's eye once, just for a second. He looked like a man staring at the wreckage of his life. The collapse came swiftly. The judge ruled in my favor, declaring my cabin and land untouchable. But the real blow landed with our counterclaim. The clerical error in the Karen family's deed was deemed significant enough to void a portion of their property, 20 acres of prime forest land adjacent to my plot. Under state law, unclaimed land could be bid on, and Clara had already filed my application. Karen's empire, built on bluster and bad faith, was crumbling. She stormed out of the courtroom, cursing everyone from the judge to her own lawyer. But there was no stopping the tide. By the end of the month, I'd legally acquired those 20 acres at a fraction of their value, turning my modest 10-acre refuge into a 30-acre stronghold. Karen's family was left with a fractured estate and a mountain of legal fees they couldn't pay. Watching Karen's downfall wasn't as sweet as I'd expected. There was no joy in seeing Greg's hollow eyes or hearing about their foreclosure notices in town. Karen's greed had cost them everything, but it had also cost her family's future. I thought about Greg's deposition, his quiet admission of living under her thumb, and wondered if he'd ever find the courage to walk away. I didn't hate them. I just wanted my home, my piece of the mountain. And now, I had more than I'd ever dreamed: land to roam, to protect, to maybe one day share with someone who'd love it as much as I did. The aftermath taught me something about fighting for what's yours. It's not about revenge or gloating. It's about standing your ground. Not because you want to win, but because some things are worth defending with everything you've got. My cabin is still here, its walls stronger for the battle they survived. I walk the new acres sometimes, feeling the earth under my boots, knowing Ellie would have loved the extra trails, the hidden streams, the quiet that feels like a gift. I don't know what became of Karen and Greg. I heard they sold what was left of their land and moved away, chased by debts and whispers. I hope Greg found some peace. I hope Karen learned something, though I doubt it. This mountain is my home, not just because I built it, but because I fought for it. It's a reminder that the world doesn't owe you anything. You have to claim your place, protect it, and sometimes take back what others try to steal. For anyone facing their own Karen, their own bully with a fake map and a loud voice, my story is proof. Don't back down. Dig in, find the truth, and fight smart. The view from the ridge is worth it.